a father and 5 stepmothers. As a little girl, it wasn't a very good childhood life, as we all have come from. Some parts of our lives has been very dysfunctional, and some other families, you know, a little dysfunctional, but mine was completely dysfunctional. And because of a lot of things in my life, so many terrible things happened to me as my life, I grew to a point in my life where I hated God. I grew to a very strong point in my life at a very early age, at around 12 years old, of hating God, not wanting anything to do with God. And the reason being is because a lot of abuse that I encountered when I went home was just not a very pretty picture. So, you know, you go to church and you hear that Jesus saves and this, that, and the other. Well, when I'd come home, it was just like straight up attack of darkness. I started drinking and popping pills at 7 years old, and smoking marijuana and cigarettes by the time I was 9, just to medicate myself from a lot of the pain that I was encountering all the time. I was a full-blown drug addict and alcoholic, when I say drug, prescription drugs, by the time I was 15 years old.
My mother wasn't on the correct track as far as parenting, and she had got in a little bit of trouble with some drugs just due to her upbringing and some of the abuse that she received. So she got in a little bit of trouble with drugs. So, you know, she spent some time, you know, trying to go through rehab, doing some drinking.
Because I suffered so much pain and hurt, I remember praying when I was about 19 years old. I talked to God and I said, God, would you give me someone to love me? Someone who would never hurt me. Someone who would never do any wrong to me. And that was just one of those flyby prayers that I'm sure a lot of people say today that are walking in darkness, you know, so that's kind of like what I did. Well, sure enough, by the time I was 20 years old, I was pregnant, of course out of wedlock, and I had a beautiful little girl.
I grew up in a dysfunctional family. And, you know, even though they say it happens in 1 in every other household, I understand it happens in, you know, 1 out of 10 households. It's dysfunctional no matter where it happens. And it's almost like society is accepting it. And it's like, it's not acceptable. You have to break the cycle. It's not an acceptable act.
I think my daughter was probably 5 or 6. I was a full-blown crackhead, out of control. Didn't know I abandoned my daughter numerous of times, left her with strangers numerous of times, you know, things like that. And I just drove myself further and further into drugs.
To be honest, at that point in time, because I was lost, it was cool. It was one of those things to where, man, I can go with my mom and we can go and do this together, because to me, that was our way of bonding. I mean, now it was a horrible way of bonding, you know, and we look back on it and we're just like, wow.
You know, because my father was so ugly and abusive in every way, fashion, and form. And my stepmothers never loved me, so I never was told I was loved, held, or anything like that, you know. So by the time I became a full-blown drug addict, I was looking for love in all the wrong places. I saw my mother in me when my daughter was about 5 or 6, you know, abandoning her, neglecting her. So I let her go with her father's side of the family.
My father's family, they were very, very negative, kind of competitive, and always putting you down. So they had to, like I said, I love them. I wouldn't change anything about them because they're my family for a reason, but they're very negative people and not very supportive. And I think it's a generational thing. So I think by them being the way that they were, and by them allowing me to cling more onto my mother and have to stand up for myself and be more responsible, I think that is how they influenced me to be a survivor and to know that I can get through anything, no matter what.
She was about 11 years old at that time. That's just how long I was out there, being out of my mind. And I called her, and her exact words to me is, "Mama, don't you love me anymore?" And that broke me. That broke me down. And because I remembered me being a little girl, my mother not loving me. When my daughter had got pregnant, about 7 months before, into her term, I met this gentleman named Mike. This man was used by God. It's just wonderful. This man was used by God. This man took me in and my daughter while she was pregnant and put us up in a hotel living facility, kind of like a little one-bedroom studio type of thing. She was there. He would come pick me up every day and take me to look for work.
So once I found out that I was pregnant and I decided I was going to go through with it, I started making the changes that I needed to make. You know, I started focusing, making sure I got done with school, making sure I got a job to start supporting my child. And I also took some parenting classes. And at that time, God intervened. It was perfect because my mother had started getting her life together. So then we were able to do it together.
Now, in the course of that time and my daughter having the baby, I became a homeless individual. And the homeless part came because of me being a drug addict. Not spending money on rent or anything like that, but every dime that I had went to some dope dealer all the time. So I was homeless for a period of time. Not sure how long, but I know what the homeless people feel like out here today. I went through so much. I encountered so much pain, so much suffering. I went through so much. I told you that I prayed to God to give me someone to love me. It was my daughter. She loved me no matter what. I would come home from days of being high. The first thing she would say when I walk in that door is, "Mama, you hungry? Come here, you need to go take a bath. And you need some rest." She would just hug me and embrace me. I'm supposed to be the mother, but my daughter's being the mother for me, you know?
With my mom changing her life and getting involved with the people that she got involved with, we started going to church with Seventh-day Adventists. And then once I started reading the Bible and they started explaining to me, you know, how the Seventh-day Adventists came about, why it's, you know, why we worship on the Sabbath, things like that. To me, it felt right on the inside. And so once it felt right on the inside, it was easier for me to start honoring and worshiping and start walking that path.
And when I became saved and delivered, finally, God showed me. That was me through your daughter showing you how much I love you.
I'm so proud of my mother. It brings tears to my eyes because when I look back at everything from the time that everything happened, from me seeing my mother be abused by my father when I grew up, to my mother getting, you know, my father was a big part of why she began doing drugs, was because he was very abusive. So when I look at all of that, and I look at the beatings my mom went through, my mom going through drugs, alcohol, and then all of a sudden turn her life around, and then for me to be able to have my child turn both of our lives around, because my mom knew at that point, once I had my child, that we needed to both make decisions. When I look at where we're both at today, we're both happy, we're married, we have our own lives, we're on the right path. So I'm this proud of her. I think I'm her biggest fan.
I don't really have known how to receive love, because nobody ever taught me what love was. I don't know. I didn't know what love is. Even when I became a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, I still didn't know what love was. Love is loving everyone unconditionally. Love is seeing that homeless person. Love is seeing that homeless person being loved by God. Love is seeing our fellow brothers and sisters, not their faults, but all of their strengths. And that's where I'm at today.